I'm going to stop it, I tell you. I'm going to stop it if it's the last thing I do. So get out of my way. What are you doing with that? Don't! Don't!
You said, Pop?
Yes, my son.
Then it should be third on the left.
I know, I've been here before.
Help! Oh, someone help! Oh, Mr. Chan. Oh, thank goodness.
And now calm yourself. What has happened?
Mrs. Crane, sir. Oh, come quickly, please. In here, sir. That's how I found her, sir.
She has been dead for some time, stabbed.
I'd just come in, sir. I'd been to a movie show.
Where's her husband?
At the party, sir.
Would appreciate to know what party and where.
At the Velasco restaurant, sir, for Miss Julie's engagement. Mrs. Crane was supposed to go there, too. That's why she let me go out.
Very strange. Late Mrs. Crane should have made appointment with me when she was expected elsewhere at engagement party.
Shall I go, sir?
Please. I must call my friend Inspector Duff at Scotland Yard.
Charlie?
Oh, Pop was just calling you.
Well, I certainly seem to have come at the right time. Who's the lady?
Her name, Mrs. Helen Crane, wife of a very wealthy director of Crane Cosmetics firm.
Uh-huh. She's the lady I'd come to see about this stolen property. Her name's inside this.
Where?
I'd wondered why it had no burglary complaint. Now I know. Excuse me while I telephone the yard. How was she killed, Charlie?
Stabbed. Have not as yet seen a weapon.
Mm-hmm. Hello. Inspector Duff here. There's been a murder at the Regina Apartments. Send the doc and the rest of the boys over right away. Number 204. Good. Oh, by the way, that sneak thief that Johnson brought in tonight. I think we're going to tack another charge onto him. Murder.
You think you have the killer, huh?
I'm pretty sure of it. Johnson, one of the men on duty here tonight, picked him up as he was going down the fire escape. He had Mrs. Crane's stuff on him. Pete Wilson is his name, known as Second Story Pete. Miserable little mousy character he is, too.
Presume he has record of violence.
No, not so far, but there's a first time for everything, you know.
Of course. But rarely does one hear roar of lion come out of mouse's throat.
Very rarely, Charlie. Who are you, madam?
I'm Alice, sir. Alice Gardner. I'm the housekeeper. It was me who found her when I came back from a movie show. Then I ran out, and there was Mr. Chan, and oh, dear, isn't it all terrible?
Is there a Mr. Crane?
Oh, yes, sir. Mr. Robert Crane. He's at his daughter's engagement party at the Velasco restaurant.
His daughter, not Mrs. Crane's.
Oh, no, sir. Miss Julie's mother was the first Mrs. Crane, a lovely lady. She died 5 years ago.
I see. Thanks, Alice. Well, send a man along to the Velasco, Charlie. Meantime, let's get along to the yard, shall we?
Oh, but you're not going to leave me alone with...
My number one son will be glad to remain until Inspector Duff's men arrive.
Yeah. Sure I will.
Right. Come on, then. Let's hear what Second Story Pete has to say for himself.
Look, you know I'd never carry a knife in me life, sir. I wouldn't hurt a fly, I wouldn't. When I'm pinched, I goes quiet and does me time like a baby. Honest, that's me.
You say that you saw the actual killing. Was the killer a man or a woman?
I didn't see, sir. I was in the other room, like I told you. I just saw the lady fall down, and then I beat it quick.
Inspector, with your permission, would like to question suspect.
Go ahead, Charlie.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson, you stated that you heard Mrs. Crane say something before being stabbed. You remember exact words?
Oh, let me see, Governor. Yes, I think I do. She said, "I'm gonna stop it, I tell you." Then she said, "Get out of me way." Then she seemed to see whoever it was coming at her, 'cause she sounded scared then, and she said, "What are you doing with that? Don't."
Did you hear any other voices?
No, Governor.
I see. Thank you.
Here, Mr. Chan, you're a detective, ain't you?
I've had small experience in that field,
Oh,
yes.
don't give me that, Mr. Chan. I've heard of you. You're a big shot. Yeah. I'd like to hire you. I've got money to pay. Leave it to the police. They'd have you on the scaffold before you knows it. What do they care so long as they nab someone? Will you take it on, Mr. Chan?
Thanks for the few kind words about the yard, Pete. Nice of you.
Will you, Mr. Chan? Find out who done it and get me off the hook. I've got money put away.
I can guess where it came from.
Money is not important, Inspector, but murder is. Forgive me, but I have strong suspicion this man is innocent of stabbing. An old Oriental detective would be very unhappy if he did not make endeavor to prove same. Yes, I shall try to help you.
Oh, thank you, Governor. God, lummy. What a relief to know there's some real brains on the job.
That'll do, Pete. Take him down, officer.
Oh, I've been waiting for you, Pop. The police have gone and taken the... Mrs. Crane away. The family's in there now.
Yes, and since I am now employed by number one suspect, second story, Mr. Wilson, I must talk to them.
But you're not working for a burglar.
No, my son, but as usual for justice. Past of client has no bearing.
We're all better off she's dead, so why pretend?
Hear that? That's the girl, Julie.
My name is Charlie Chan, Mr. Crane. Please forgive me if my arrival is inopportune.
Not at all, Mr. Chan. We're most grateful to your son for having stayed here with Alice until the police arrived. Naturally, she was nervous and didn't wish to be left alone. My daughter, Julie, her fiancé, Dr. Pearson.
I am most honored. Miss Crane, you are aware that I was on investigation work for your late wife?
You were? No, I didn't know, Mr. Chan. May I ask what it was?
I was to look into the background, also discover whereabouts of a Mr. John Bolton.
Typical of Helen. Did you complete your investigation?
I completed investigation and was to present my report to Mrs. Crane at 7 o'clock this evening. However, when I arrived, unfortunate lady was dead, murdered.
7 o'clock? But my wife had agreed to be at the restaurant at 7 o'clock to arrange Julie's party.
Don't you see, Daddy? She didn't want there to be any party. She was going to use that report to stop our engagement being announced.
Oh, then that was what late Mrs. Crane was determined to stop, hmm?
Mr. Chan, that report, I beg of you, give it to me. I'll write you out a check for any amount you consider adequate for your work. Then I must ask you to please forget all about it.
I regret my inability to do as you ask, Mr. Crane.
I reckon it'll have to be more than an adequate amount, Mr. Crane. That report's worth real money.
Say, are you trying to call my pop a blackmailer?
One moment, my son. As I was about to say, Mr. Crane, before we were interrupted, this report might have important bearing on murder investigation.
But I thought they'd got the man that did it. That sneak thief, Wilson, or whatever his name is.
Mr. Wilson is now employer of humble self. My task is to prove that he did not commit murder.
But that's absurd. Of course he did it. The police are in no doubt about it.
I know police are most trustworthy, also very efficient, Mr. Crane. However, they are not infallible.
I made some tea, sir. I thought Miss Judy would like some.
Thank you, Alice.
Are you all right, dear?
Yes, I'm all right.
You've had a nasty shock, my pet, and you shouldn't be bothered. Have your tea, and let Alice tuck you up in bed. I'm right, Doctor, aren't I?
Oh, Alice, don't fuss! Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to snap. Oh, of course I'll have my tea. It was sweet of you to think of me.
If Wilson didn't kill my wife, then who did?
As yet, very difficult to say. However, would like to point out that no weapon was found on person of Mr. Pete Wilson, nor as yet has any weapon been found in the apartment.
So, what does that prove?
Would anyone in this room recognize these words? We are all better off now that she is dead, so why pretend?
Yes. I said it. But I didn't kill her. I only meant I wasn't going to be a hypocrite and pretend I was sorry.
You're not being so crazy as to contend that Julie had anything to do with this.
Please believe me, I am contending nothing yet. But must point out, in my humble opinion, that murderer must be a person who knew this apartment well enough to conceal weapon before discovery of body.
You mean one of us?
Regrettably, Mr. Crane, yes. One of you.
All right, Mr. Chan, it's true. All of us are much better off now that my wife is dead.
But that doesn't mean to say that we'd kill her.
One question, if you please.
Go ahead.
Would you know why Mrs. Crane was so anxious to prevent the marriage of your beautiful daughter to Dr. Pearson?
Money, Mr. Chan, purely money. My wife was very fond of money.
Would you explain, please?
My father built Crane's Cosmetics Company into a successful business, but he left a rather unusual will. All his shares came to me. But on the marriage of my eldest child, half of them were to be handed over, provided he or she worked in the business. Julie is my only child. She is a departmental head at Crane's.
And evidently, Mrs. Crane was afraid her manner of living would be greatly reduced.
We would still be comfortably off, but my wife loved luxury.
She was bad, sir. She was always jealous of Miss Julie. From the very first day she came here. It's a terrible thing to say, but I'm almost glad she's dead.
Oh, Alice, don't. What good does it do? I thought today was going to be so wonderful.
I am most unhappy that my questioning has disturbed such a beautiful young lady. Miss Julie's very tired. I suggest you put her to bed.
I will, and thank you, sir. Now come along, Julie, my lamb, come along.
Pretend it's a lovely day.
Never mind, darling. There's tomorrow.
That was most kind of you, Mr. Chan.
Oh, thank you. May I have your permission to borrow these scissors?
I imagine your asking permission is only a polite formality.
Quite true, Mr. Crane. However, politeness, like old wine, improves many occasions. Your permission?
Go ahead.
Thank you. I shall hope to see you tomorrow.
That report, Mr. Chan. Couldn't you possibly...
Doctor, please, until tomorrow? Thank you.
Could be, Charlie. They could have caused the wound that killed Helen Crane. I'll have the lab check over for traces of blood and fingerprints. If you ask me, they've been pretty thoroughly wiped clean.
Have also observed same, Inspector. However, I'm also hoping small traces of blood might be found in crevices.
Crime lab?
Yes?
Inspector Duff speaking. Send someone over, will you? I want to have something checked.
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
I'm now wondering, Inspector, if you still intend placing charge of murder against my client, Mr. Wilson.
Not just yet, but I shall. Make no mistake about that.
Sincerely hope you will not regret hasty decision.
Don't worry about me, Charlie. Your nice Mr. Wilson is safe and sound in jail. He comes up before the magistrates first thing in the morning on a charge of housebreaking. So that'll keep him inside until I'm ready to charge him with murder.
Prisoner's entrance.
What's going to happen to me now?
You're up for housebreaking.
Well, what about the other? You know, the woman, what got done in?
I reckon they're saving that one for later.
But I never done it.
Tell that to the Marines.
Hats off. Sorry, Chuck.
Got clear away, the little twerp, but we'll get him back, never you fear. Your quiet, innocent little client, eh? No violence about him, you said. Just bashed Constable Brown over the head with a chair, that's all.
A very ungentlemanly gesture, I agree, Inspector. However, I have heard that in moments of peril, even small mouse will bite.
Some mouse. Ask Constable Brown.
Inspector, have you received lab report on scissors?
That's right. Change the subject. Okay, Charlie, here it is. You were right, as usual. They found traces of blood. Same group as Helen Crane. Rather an unusual group, as a matter of fact. So it looks as though Pete Wilson grabbed up the scissors and attacked her as she disturbed him, stealing her property.
Oh, correction, please. Looks as if someone grabbed up scissors and attacked Mrs. Crane.
Nothing if not stubborn, eh, Charlie?
I fear I have always been known for my obstinacy, Inspector. However, sometimes very valuable for a client like Mr. Wilson.
Say, Pop, why don't I go see this Pearson guy? He's my bet for the murder. Maybe I can get him to talk.
I appreciate your cooperation, my son. However, I must continue investigation into disturbing waters of Crane household. Goodbye, Inspector. And now for a very serious and most important question. You first, Miss Julie.
Yes, Mr. Chan?
Did Dr. Pearson ever tell you the story of John Bolton?
Yes. He was Dennis's father. He killed his wife when Dennis was 3. He was found guilty but insane and sent to Broadmoor prison where he died. An aunt adopted Dennis and changed his name to Pearson.
I see. And Mr. Crane, did you also know this?
Dr. Pearson told my daughter and me before he asked her to marry him.
Did anybody tell Mrs. Crane?
No, it was none of her business.
Evidently, her weapon to prevent Miss Julie's marriage was like a gun without a bullet.
Of course it wouldn't have stopped me marrying Dennis.
If the story had got out, it could have ruined my practice.
But that would not have achieved Mrs. Crane's main object, which was to retain shares in family business. I'm now happy to say report on Mr. Bolton no longer necessary.
Mr. Chan, there's something I'd like you to know.
Yes?
Before I asked Julie to be my wife, I made quite certain that my father's mental disease was not hereditary.
This fact was discovered by humble self during investigation. The brain injury was caused by wound received during the war. Now, one more question. First, Mrs. Crane also worked in family business, did she not?
Yes, she did, but how did you know?
Merely wondering. Also wondered who took care of Miss Julie as a child.
Why, Alice, of course. She practically brought me up. She was wonderful.
Thank you all very much. I am most grateful. And now, good day.
Does he still think one of us here in this apartment killed Helen?
I wish I knew.
My money is still on Pearson, Pop. He's the only one left with a motive. That report would have killed his practice as a doctor.
I am now aware of the person who killed Mrs. Crane, however, unaware of method by which it was done. You may come out now, Peter. Perfectly all right, quite safe.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chan, really I am. I know I shouldn't have bashed the cop, but they were going to charge me with killing the lady, and I never done it.
Now I am quite sure you did not.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chan. I'll take my medicine for crowning the copper if only you'll get me off the murder charge.
Perhaps this is possible, providing you help me.
I'll do anything, Mr. Chan.
Barry? Would you be so kind as to loan Mr. Wilson one of your conservative outfits?
What for?
I would like to take Mr. Wilson for a little walk, and do not desire to have him recognized.
Okay.
It's Mr. Chan again, sir. He wants to know if he can see you.
I suppose so, Alice. Show him in.
Oh, he frightens me the way he keeps on and on. He's quiet and gentle, yet there's a kind of ruthlessness about him, too.
Oh, please, Miss Alice, remain.
Oh, if you want me to, sir.
Apologies for intrusion, but have someone would like you to meet.
Who is this fellow?
May I introduce you to my new employer, Mr. Peter Second Story Wilson.
How do you do? What's the meaning of this, Mr. Chan? That man is an escaped criminal. You've no right to bring him in here.
Mr. Wilson intends to give himself up after doing important work.
I'm going to phone for the police at once.
Not necessary. My number 1 son is already at Scotland Yard informing them of Mr. Wilson's whereabouts.
What are you trying to do to us, Mr. Chan?
Don't fret, my lamb. Alice is with you.
Mr. Crane, Mr. Wilson did not kill your wife. he did see her die. While unlawfully and shamefully robbing her jewel case, he heard voice of person who did kill her. He's here now to identify that voice. Mr. Wilson?
It was her, Governor. A young one.
No! No! I didn't kill her, Alice! I swear I didn't kill her!
He's a liar. I know he's a liar.
But how can you be so sure?
He couldn't have heard anything because I never said a word.
I see, Miss Alice. Would you please continue?
I was sewing a bit of lace onto her frock, kneeling on the floor in front of that woman. And she began taunting me about how she was going to stop Miss Julie's engagement party. She was going to tell them all the people at the party, what she'd found out about Dr. Pearson's father. She didn't say what it was, but it was something very bad. So I went for her with the scissors, and I killed her. I had to, you see. She was going to harm Julie.
Alice.
Miss Julie was my baby, the only child I'd ever had. I couldn't stand by and let that woman spoil her life.
You see, Miss Alice, Miss Julie, her father, and everybody else knew that the story about Dr. Pearson's background could never stop the marriage. Unfortunately, you were not aware of this fact.
And you believed in me from the start, didn't you, Governor?
Yes, but for a reason. I hope you will all understand that I had to morally prove that this man was not guilty of false accusation of murder. However, I am not very proud of motive I was obliged to use to make this poor lady confess.
Yeah, she was willing to stand by and let me take the rap, weren't she?
True. But to use a genuine love, even to trap a person who has taken another's life, sometimes is very distasteful. I'm afraid, Miss Alice, this is Scotland Yard.
Well. So Charlie Chan succeeds again. Eh?
But not very pleased with achievement, Inspector. I'm worried about what will happen to that poor, misguided old lady who committed the crime.
Well, it wasn't premeditated. She felt she was protecting the girl. If I know anything about juries, they won't be too tough with her.
I sincerely hope so.
Say, what's going to happen to Second Story Pete? I mean, for conking the copper and that.
A year or two, maybe. But don't worry, jail's like home to him. He loves it.
Gee, Pop, it's not going to be easy living it down.
What, my son?
You taking a burglar for a client. Hey, you don't mind if I tell people this is one of the cases you solved alone, do you?
Well, since my number one son's reputation is of first importance, I shall take great care not to reveal brilliant work you have done on this case.
Thanks.